Hey, welcome to today's Cam and Otis show. Today we have entrepreneur, semi-neighbor, Colorado entrepreneur of Vortic watches, RT Custer. Hey, RT, great to have you with us, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, right off the bat, uh, I'm fascinated by the tinkering that must have gone into why watches. Well, you're an industrial engineer, right? Went to Penn State, is it?
Yeah, industrial engineering at Penn State, business partner's a math major, but neither of us were watchmakers or watch guys. So,
So did you were you a tinkerer growing up? Were you one of those kids that just took apart things and put them back together just to see, or what happened? How'd this get going?
yeah, well, as a kid, to answer that question, I was Legos all day, every day, and that's I have a 1-year-old and 3-year-old now, both boys, and so that's gonna be my thing. I think my two things with my sons are gonna be Legos and golf. Hopefully they like one or both of those things because that's what I want to do with them. So, but yeah, all growing up, play with Legos a lot. Both my parents were in advertising for their whole careers, and I grew up watching the Super Bowl for the ads. We muted the sports ball, is what I call it, and then we watch the advertisements, and that's the home I grew up in. But they saw how much fun I had with Legos and playing with that, and then video games and all that kind of stuff. And so somehow I ended up taking a drafting course and getting really interested in architecture. And then, my mom went to Penn State, and we lived in Pennsylvania. It's a fantastic school, very inexpensive to go to if you're in-state tuition, and so and it's a great engineering school for all engineering, not just like architectural engineering. And so somehow I ended up going to engineering school, and I really really liked it. And yeah, we had the watch idea on the golf course after class one day.
Well, I
That's
got to jump back to one thing before I let Camden go, and this is the dad note for you. When my kids were born, and particularly when our first son, Camden's older brother, was born, I couldn't wait till they got to that age where it's like, ooh, I get to buy those toys that I loved, and hopefully they
Yep.
love them. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I know that feeling. I don't know, Camden, you probably didn't realize that, but a lot of the toys that you have is because I thought they were fun toys.
It's got to
makes me
be fun for
lucky.
everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, RT, what I wanted to ask was, so how did you get your entrepreneurial start? Where did that energy come from? I know you grew up on a Christmas tree farm, which is awesome.
Hmm.
Sounds pretty magical. I'm sure it wasn't quite as magical as we all think it is,
Yeah.
but is the family farm really where that entrepreneurial spirit came from?
Yeah, my great grandfather, Charles Aubrey DeLong, started DeLong Christmas Tree Farm in 1941 after he worked for the state of Pennsylvania as a forester for 25 years without getting a raise. He quit and started his own thing. And 1941 was a different time, and Christmas trees were big business back then. And he and my grandfather, um, they decided early on that they were gonna. They both had full-time jobs. They still worked as foresters, and my grandfather actually worked for the state as well. Um, and the Christmas tree farm for them and then my parents was always a side hustle. It was income, around the holiday season, and something to do for all of us, during the summer, taking care of everything. And then it was a piece of property, and it still is. It's a very valuable, very beautiful piece of 40 some acres in Pennsylvania. Um, and so yeah, I just that like side hustle kind of you know went through my entire family, through all the generations, and I'm an only child, so I had to help on the farm. That was part of my chores. If I wanted a new video game, for me it was Halo, right, on Xbox back in the day. And if I wanted the new Halo 2 game or whatever, then I had to go work. And back then I made, I don't know, $8 an hour or something like that. And so I had to work a day or two to afford my $50-$60 video game.
That
That's great.
I'm sorry, but that's pretty good pay. $8 an hour. I mean, I
Yeah.
would have Man, that's skilled labor from when I was a kid.
And it's all relative, right? I mean, we're
Yeah,
talking
it
early
is.
2000s for me. So
It is. So when you had the epiphany, would you call it an epiphany out on the golf course when you came up with the, hey, let's build watches? Was it an epiphany or what was it?
it's funny. My friend and I were talking about entrepreneurship and starting a business, and he said, it takes a lot of arrogance to start a business. And that's the word I think I would use, is just like, we had absolutely no idea how to make a watch, how watches were made. I didn't know anything about watches. I owned a Fossil that I think my high school girlfriend bought me for, I don't know, maybe $200, right? Um, my business partner Tyler, he really liked vintage watches, and he had a small collection of like vintage Timex, that he really enjoyed, and that's kind of what started the conversation. Is he took his watch off to hit his first shot on the first tee, and I, just asked him, like, why don't you keep wearing your watch for golf? And that just kind of started a conversation about, there's certain watches for certain things, and that just kind of fascinated me. And we spent the whole round talking about watches, and that was the beginning of it.
I have to ask, as somebody who had plenty of business ideas and a couple that I followed through on in college, how beer driven was this one out on the golf course? Because I know I got my first business name, which I still love, Aquatunities, and just aquaponics, opportunities, boom. And that was the $1 million idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So not beer driven at that time. I actually didn't drink until I was 21, save like one instance when I was 20, and it didn't go well. So I think that's why I didn't. Which is, I went to Penn State, right? Famous for being a huge party school, but I don't know. I worked through college. And so I was more driven by, like, this is really fascinating to me, and like the engineering of how it's made was really fascinating, and kind of the core principle of what we do. Currently, Vortic Watch Company is one of the only American watch companies, and we're one of the only ones that makes everything in the United States. And that was our initial idea that I got really excited about, which then took a lot of beer to work through, of just like long nights of researching and like, talking about crazy ideas. But the question was, most watches are made in China or Switzerland. Why? Why is that? And then, can we make a watch completely in the United States? That was the question. And it took years to figure it out. And we ended up like cheating a little bit, and we use antique American pocket watches that were made 100 years ago as the mechanism, and then we make the whole outside and turn those pocket watches into wristwatches, creating the only truly American made wristwatch.
So I think before we dive in, because Dad, I'm sure you got engineering things to jump on as far as that process goes, and I'm very interested in it, but that is not my wheelhouse. I just wanted to ask, what was the oldest pocket watch you've worked with as far as turning it over into a new wristwatch?
So the old pocket watch companies all kind of got started in the early to mid 1800s, but they didn't mass produce anything with repeatable parts and things that can be used for what we do until the late 1800s. And so, to answer your question, 1894 is the oldest pocket watch we've ever turned into a usable wristwatch.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
So which was first though? And you're right, Camden. I want to dive all into the whole engineering thing, and but I'm resistant. I'm resistant.
Hey, I talk about agriculture. You can talk about engineering.
We'll go as deep as you want. I can go deep on agriculture too. I ran a Christmas tree farm. Still,
that's
there we
right.
Go.
Oh man, we both go on that all day long. But was it I want to be an entrepreneur and then found an idea, or I found an idea, the watches, and then became an entrepreneur?
I think I was destined to be an entrepreneur. And lots of reasons behind that. Basically at that time, when we had the idea, I was a junior in college. And I had just come off of a 2-year stint with College Works Painting, which is a multi-level marketing company in the exterior house painting business. And they recruited me. I didn't know what an MLM was at that time, but I got sucked in and was really excited about it. And I ended up being number 1 in the state, number 3 in the nation as a freshman year. I made $120,000 as a freshman. 19-year-old just painting people's houses. I had never once touched a paintbrush in my life. And so my dad, my advisors, my friends, and my boss in that internship, they said, hey, you might want to think about going into sales or business instead of engineering, because, you can sell ice to Eskimos. And I was like, well, that's not why I'm like, this is fun. Like I was having fun. I was meeting new people. I was, going door to door, selling things to people. I was, every house that I painted, typically they were big houses owned by small business owners or entrepreneurs. I got to learn their story, and, like it's so much fun. And so I was just kind of coming out of that, and I was about to start an engineering internship with Procter and Gamble, which was awesome. I loved that. I worked in their Pampers plant, so we made Pampers diapers, which now as a dad, I'm like, every time I open a can or a thing of Pampers, I'm just like, I can recall that exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I loved being an entrepreneur, and like, running a painting company for a couple of summers was awesome. And, obviously I grew up around entrepreneurs running the Christmas tree farm. And after that after we had the idea for Vortic Watch Company, I started taking some entrepreneurship and leadership classes at Penn State. And I ended up staying in school for 5 years. And so I got an industrial engineering degree, and then I got a double minor in entrepreneurship and leadership development in the business school, mostly because they wouldn't let me switch from engineering to business. I tried to switch, and they wouldn't let me. I would have had to start over.
Yeah, I was going to say, they told you had to go back to go and start all over, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I was already halfway to Boardwalk, so I couldn't do that. But yeah.
So RT, I wanted to see, as you grew Vortic watches out of, as a college entrepreneur and then into what it is now, what was one of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
There's so many. So the biggest challenge that Vortic Watch Company and myself personally have faced is currently ongoing. We got sued by the Swatch Group, which is the world's largest watch company. They're a $9 billion conglomerate that owns Omega, Swatch, and like, I think 25 other watch brands.
Wow.
And
I knew they were big, but I had no idea they were that big.
Huge. I mean, yeah, 9 billion was 2017 or 2018 total revenue. And obviously based in Switzerland. And so we take old pocket watches and we turn them into wristwatches. Pocket watches were made 100 years ago in America by different companies that are totally out of business now. Mm-hmm. But one of the pocket watch companies was called Hamilton. The Hamilton Watch Company was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They made some of the best watches in the world. They were called the watch that won the war in World War II. I'm wearing one right now. It's an old military pocket watch.
That's my favorite watch y'all make, by the way.
It's the coolest thing I've ever done. So proud of it. Anyway,
yeah.
Some of the Hamilton pocket watches say Hamilton right on the face of the watch. And so when we turn that into a wristwatch, it says Hamilton right on the face of the watch, which is an original antique. It's 100 years old. Most people that buy it, they totally get that and they understand it. And it says Vortic on the back because we're proud of our engineering. We didn't make the thing inside. We're not going to change that. Anyway, the Swatch Group owns the trademark to the word Hamilton because they purchased the Hamilton Watch Company and all the rights to it in 1972 after it went into business in 69. So, trying to make a really long story short, they sued us for trademark infringement and counterfeiting, and basically accused us of printing their brand on the face of a watch that we sell, which is obviously incorrect. Everybody that sees it knows that. I know that. And without diving into the law, it's a really fascinating case. It's called upcycling. There's all kinds of legal terminology, like the first use doctrine that protects people like me that upcycle and recycle old things. But this is America. Anyone can sue anyone over anything. And we got sued by the world's largest watch company, and that was May of 2015. And I got a cease and desist and started the lawsuit when we hadn't cleared 6 figures in total revenue to date as a company. So it's like myself, my business partner, and a designer in an office smaller than the office I'm sitting in right now, barely a business, and we get sued by the biggest one. And we've been fighting it since, and we took them to federal court. The final trial happened in February in New York City, and I sat and stared at the judge and told her everything from start to finish. And it went extremely well. We still don't know what happened yet. We were waiting for the judge to tell us, but that's the hardest thing that's ever happened to us, because I mean, it's 5 years deep, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And, if there's any one reason I can't sleep at night, it's I have a pending federal lawsuit against me personally. They sued me personally too, not just the company. So,
Wow.
yeah, I tried to make a really long story short there. So I apologize for all the details, but that is what it is.
I think that's important though, for everybody to understand is when something like that happens, especially, a big company, 9 billion, they have an infinite amount of lawyers on their payroll. They don't even have to hire them out. They've got them on their payroll.
Sure.
And when you're a small business and you're squeezing capital, and now not only are you squeezing more capital out to pay for a lawyer, you're expending time, and then on top of the time, it becomes a distraction on the focus of your business.
Oh, yeah.
And that is to have survived 5 years on this lawsuit. That's saying something about a little bit of fortitude and focus to what you want to achieve. And that good on you to do that. And, it's not just the David and Goliath thing, which, we all want to root for the underdog, but it's the sticking to it and knowing that your process and your values are correct. So good on you to do.
Yeah. Well, and it hasn't all been good. I mean, it's about a year and a half ago. I had a 2-year-old, and my girlfriend was, 8 months pregnant. I lost 2 employees on the same day for just an HR kind of related issue. And, basically half my team left on the same day. And I found out that the Swatch Group had rejected my last settlement offer. We've been trying to figure out, like, hey, let's be friends instead of enemies and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously that was a huge waste of time. They weren't interested in any of that. They rejected the offer, and I realized we're going to have to take them to trial, which was going to be 6 figures worth of legal costs. And so I'm sitting in my car outside of my workshop trying to figure out what I tell the rest of my team, how I'm going to explain this to my investors, what I'm going to do to my bank that I owe about $500,000 to. And I Googled best Colorado bankruptcy attorney, just to find out what my options were, and called a couple friends that were attorneys, and, sat there in my car kind of contemplating, like, what do I do? And I found the best Colorado bankruptcy attorney, called him, and his assistant was like, yeah, he's actually available right now if you want to do your intro call. He'll give you your first hour for free. And on that phone, this gentleman's name is Rob, and he changed my life. And he said, RT, you are correct. The law is on your side. You do not need to file for bankruptcy. Let's take these people, he used a different word, to court and show them what a Colorado entrepreneur can do. And he believed in me. And he's not the only one. There's been hundreds of people and thousands of customers that have believed in me and believed in us that have kept us going. So yeah, I'm the guy in the front of the battlefield holding the flag, sprinting at the enemy, screaming, but there's a whole bunch of people with bigger weapons behind me that are actually doing the work. And so it takes an army.
Yeah, that's awesome that you've got that team around you. And I've talked about this on several occasions. It's not just the the team in the company, but it's the network, the family, the friends, the advisors. That's your team. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. And the customers that when we finally shared that this was all happening, because we kept it under wraps for a long time, when we finally started talking about it publicly, I mean, we got hundreds of emails from customers and potential customers saying, hey, I've been on the fence about buying one, buying a watch from you guys, because I'm just waiting for the right time or whatever. But that now is the right time. So tell me which one to buy. I want to support you. Like, I mean, we've done really well. It just since we've kind of started being open about all of this stuff, and that taught me a lesson, which was, not to be ashamed of the process and to share this stuff and talk about this stuff, because customers love it, investors love it, bankers love it. Like, they're just like, oh my gosh, you're telling us that this is happening. Like, nobody shared that level of information. And so I think that whole process just helps get trust with your entire network, and then they want to help.
Before we move on to the more positive side of things, obviously this is a little bit of a downer moment. I wanted to just,
Sure.
I think we could get a great lesson out of this for other entrepreneurs. If you could take us through a little bit more of the like leadership and operational side of things, of dealing with something that big and, that's scary really, but then still making it so that you're able to go to work every morning and keep the team moving forward. How did you get through that?
Yeah. So one big lesson that somebody taught me fairly recently is that sales cures all. And so if you're selling watches and you're making money, then you can do all this other stuff. And so you can't take your foot off the gas. And I've always had my foot on the gas. We're always selling stuff. There's always something for sale, even if we're out of inventory, we're out of stock, or there's some other issue. Something is there that we can make money from. And so as long as there's revenue coming in, your employees are happy because they see that. And we're super open about that. Every time we sell a watch, we use Slack and we set up a Zapier. So every time we get a Shopify sale, everybody gets a little GIF that pops up in Slack that's like somebody's, opening a champagne bottle every time we sell a watch. So everybody knows exactly how much money we're making every day, every month. So you can celebrate those sales. That's obviously a really positive thing. The other thing from a leadership standpoint is, I share all this stuff publicly. I put all this stuff on my Instagram, everything, personal life, all this stuff. I also share that all in my meetings with my team. We have a weekly team meeting every Tuesday morning where we just say, hey, what's the biggest issue everybody's facing? How can I help? How can we help? We all pick a one thing. And this is a new idea that we came up with recently, but it's been really helpful. Everyone on my team has one thing that they have to do that week that's outside of their normal daily routine, but that would change their daily routine and make it better. Sometimes it's just cleaning the workspace. Sometimes it's writing an SOP. Sometimes it's, like this week we're hiring new people. So my one thing is to set up at least 10 interviews for our two new positions that we're trying to hire for. That's obviously part of my job description, but outside my daily, routine. Mm-hmm. And so that's been super helpful. And then just like being positive, like me being positive about everything and just saying, hey guys, yeah, we're getting sued by the world's largest watch company. Not ideal. Spend a lot of money on that. That's all, it's a downer, like you said, but we're winning. We're selling watches. Customers love us. Everybody loves us. Everybody's on our side, and it's all going to be totally fine. And even if we lose this lawsuit, we'll still be okay. Your job still exists. Everything will be fine. It's just kind of a trademark thing that's all even over my head, honestly. And so just staying positive about all that stuff, and then hiring positive people that are also positive about things in general is all just really helpful.
Well, that's a foundational thing that is critical is getting the right people in the team right from the get-go. So what process do you use? Is it gut? Do you have and I'll just throw this out there because Dave Ramsey, I think he's told me, not told me, but said one time, and I happened to be there. So yeah, he did tell me that he does 12 interviews before he hires somebody. You know,
Yeah.
you think about it, that's a long
A
path,
lot.
but you know, you're pretty certain by the time somebody makes it through that 12th interview,
Yeah.
that they're going to be a good fit to the team. So, what's your process?
I'll walk you through the whole thing. It's not a secret. I can't trademark it or patent it. So, um, and it's also a new thing. About a year ago, about a year and a half ago, I lost those two associates on the same day, and it was something that I did wrong. I was not
Mm.
being a good leader. I was not being as open and honest about everything as I could be, and everybody wasn't in the boat paddling the same direction. And so at that moment, I said, okay, if I'm going to replace these people and I'm going to keep hustling, I'm going to keep doing all this stuff, I need to replace them with the right people. And how do I find the right people? And so step one is working with a legitimate job search company. So instead of posting my job on Craigslist, I posted it on Indeed. It's simple, but and then I pay Indeed. You know, you pay Indeed $20 a day to advertise your job to more people. It's worth, do it for 10 days. It's $200. I would spend $2,000 to get the people that I have currently. So that's a drop in the bucket. The last job we posted, I hyped it up. So the job is assembling watches. It's taking parts and putting them together. And I could have called it assembling watches or watch assembly or assembly technician or something like that. We called it watchmaker's apprentice because that's kind of what it is. It's all the same, but basically the way I described the job is what it is. It's, hey, you're going to work for one of my watchmakers and you're going to learn everything it takes to go from all these 100 different parts and create this beautiful assembly of a one-of-a-kind piece of art that we sell for thousands of dollars to a random human thousands of miles away. And you're going to be insanely proud of what you do and what we do. And it's going to take you 6 months to learn the process. So we're going to call it an apprenticeship, and you make a salary for that 6 months. And then when you graduate and you make a watch by yourself without our help that's fully sellable, then you've graduated, you get a huge salary bump, and welcome to the team, and you're here for hopefully forever. And I typed that all up in this big long Indeed thing and just hyped it up. And it is a really cool job. But you know, it's all about, I could have just put bullet points of here's your expectations. You have to be here at this time. If you're late, you're fired, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't do that. I sold it. I sold the job. We had 200 applicants for that last job, just here in Fort Collins, Colorado, small town. And then what I did was I had everyone that applied on Indeed, I sent them a survey. And in the survey, we used Airtable for the survey. And anyone that wants to see the survey, just email me. I'll send you a link to the survey. In the survey, there's traps. And so I don't want someone for that job that is a sales. I don't want someone like me. I want someone who wants to do the same thing all the time, is really excited about super detailed work. And so there's the biggest trap is it says, choose one of these options. It says, I am great at coming up with new epic ideas, or I am awesome at taking someone else's idea and bringing it to life. And if you choose that I am great at coming up with new ideas, it immediately, I don't even see your resume. It's gone forever. I don't even look at it because I don't want somebody like that. And that's your first trap. And there's like 5 different traps in there. And so from that 200, I used the survey to narrow it down to about 20. I interviewed those 20 people. And I have a really simple 20-minute interview process where I ask them 6 questions. I say, tell me about your best and worst job, your best and worst boss, and your best and worst coworker, and why. And the and why is a trap, because if they just say, hey, I had this boss and, you know, here's his name and whatever, and he was great, that's not helpful. I want a story about, you know, this last manager I had was great and he, you know, really took care of us. When somebody answers those 6 questions, you learn a lot about how they work with each other, how they work with their managers, you know, who they are as an individual. And by the end of those answers to those 6 questions, you know exactly if you want to hire that person or not. And so I take those 20 people And using those 6 questions, I narrow it down to 2 people. And then those 2 people get to meet the rest of the team. And that final interview is with everyone else that works for Vortic Watch Company. The whole rest of my team just kind of hangs out with them for like an hour. They chat, they show them the job, they show whatever they want to do. They get a tour of the facility, and then we all sit around a conference table and just have a talk, kind of answer the same questions, honestly. And then the rest of my team votes on which of those 2 individuals they want to work with. And that person gets the job. So I'm picking 2 people that I would hire. I don't care. I like both of those 2 people. I would hire either one of them. And then my team picks from those 2. And then it's done. And then you have your person, you give them the job offer. And hopefully by that point, they accept the job offer. We've had people not accept the job offer for other reasons. And then you feel really depressed. And then it's all a waste of time. And then you offer the other person the job. But that's the whole process. It's kind of a funnel, and you weed people out through it. And you got to have traps in there to find out what type of person they are. And then the key to that, though, that people really love and people that interview with us really, really appreciate is that I don't make the decision. The rest of the team makes the decision. And so they feel like they just won like Survivor or something.
Because they got voted onto the island,
they got
right?
voted onto the team. And it's so like the like collaboration and just like the positivity that comes from that as like, I'm part of this team now. That's worked really well. Obviously we're a small company, there's only 6 of us total. So I have the bandwidth to do all of that stuff. If you run a bigger company, that's probably not as feasible, but I think it is repeatable. If you have an HR person or someone, they can do all that stuff.
And there's definitely, I was going to say, there's definitely plenty of lessons that you can pull out of that and then use in a smaller or larger business, however you want as a leader. The one that I was thinking is, as you were talking about the best and worst bosses that they've had, it makes me think back to my rugby days and listening to different people talk about coaches. And you could learn so much about a kid. There was a guy, and I won't name drop him, even though all my old rugby buddies will get a kick out of it, that was here at U of A my freshman year, got recruited with me. And I remember talking to him like a week or 2 in, and he's like, "Man, freaking Duffy." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, making us run." Right. The hell are you here for, kid?
It's a trap. It's a trap, and I mean, I've heard so many stories. They're like, "Well, I had this manager and he was really cool. He was the best boss I've ever had, really lenient." And I'm like, tell me more. Why was he lenient? And they were like, "Well, this one time, we were between jobs and I took a nap in the van. And he saw me taking a nap and he woke me up and he didn't fire me." And I was like, "Okay, great." And that was the last question I had that individual answer. And that was his last chance at getting this job. If you nap on the job and you tell someone, like, why would you share that story in an interview? But he felt asking those questions makes the interviewee feel comfortable enough to sit back and tell you a story, and they don't realize what they're saying before you just, they just gave you the farm.
Oh yeah. It reminds me. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you can use it the other way too, though. That's 100%. What I was thinking is you're in those positions. You're like, man, I want somebody that is like, I want to give them a task and they're going to stay on that task and make that the best task that they could ever do.
Oh yeah.
But then you might be hiring somebody else, a new sales guy or whatever, and you want that guy to just be like, man, I want to try this and go out and find that and build this. And so, the process that you have is a repeatable process. And that's what's cool about it. You just learning to tweak what those questions are. And then the other piece I want to, I'll make a comment, but then I'll ask you the question is you're doing the team thing. And that's what so many people miss out on, is including the team, trusting the team, and including them in decisions allows them to feel that they're not just getting a paycheck. They're part of the team and a contributor to the team. And that's huge. And that's how you keep the team together and excel in what you're going to do. And what I wanted to ask you, though, is because you minored in entrepreneurship and leadership, and this will be a dig on Camden, but what was the academic pieces, that you got from that that you're still using now?
Yeah. Gosh, it's hard to pull specific things from academia, but I'll tell you one story that I'll never forget. My first entrepreneurship class, it was, E-Ship 201 at Penn State. Matt, I forget, the professor didn't even go by his last name. His name was Professor Matt. And day one, we walk in. There's like 40 of us in the class. He breaks us all into groups of 5, and he says, okay, you're all in your groups. And he puts a $5 bill on the counter in front of each group. And he says, I have just invested $5 in each of your companies. The 5 of you are co-founders in a company, and your initial investment is $5. You cannot raise any more money. You can't take a bank loan. You can't do anything else financially. You have to use that $5 and turn that $5 into the most money you can in the next 6 weeks. And the group that makes the most money out of this $5 initial investment gets an A. And for the whole course. And the group that makes the most money, that makes the second most, gets a B, a C, a D. Nobody fails because they lost, etc. And all of us, and then he put a list of rules on the board. He had to do something that's legal and all that stuff. Couldn't sell alcohol, drugs, that kind of stuff. But within reason, you have to take that $5 and make as much money as you can. And we're all just like, okay, well, $5 is not enough to start a business. Like, what do we do? Like, some groups are depressed, and like we're and then we across weeks, everybody's trying to figure out what to do, and we all did different things, and we ended up doing several different little hustles, right? But at the end of it, somebody won. I think we got second, so I got a B. But the point was that $5 is irrelevant. It's how do you go make money from nothing? $5 is basically nothing. So the people, the groups that tried to invest their $5 and buy something and flip it and then sell it for $10 and $20, they did okay, right? That's an okay way to do business, right? It's just let's keep trying to double our money. But the groups that said, forget the $5, what can we go get for free and make money and just do this? Those are the groups that were successful. And that project not only taught us like the definition of entrepreneurship and hustling and sales and all that stuff, it also taught us how to work together as a team. And it should have taught me to not start a business with 5 people. That's way too many. That's way too many cooks in the kitchen. We started Vortic with 4 business partners, the foursome on the golf course. There's now just 2 of us. And that's a whole nother podcast right there. But anyway, that's the best thing that ever happened to me in academia. And to just kind of put a bow on that whole thing, the best professors I had in entrepreneurship or engineering or leadership development, they weren't lifetime educators. They were entrepreneurs themselves that then retired, or engineers themselves that then retired, and in retirement gave back by teaching at Penn State. And now that's what I want to do. When I retire, I'm going to go teach because I've been inspired by them, and that's a long time from now. But gosh, that's cool, right? Like that's the point of education is to teach from experience. And then that's the point of leadership, right? That's what I do every day now. I teach from experience. I've, all that whole hiring process was learned from massive failures. And so now it's awesome, but it wasn't always that good.
I 100% agree with what you're saying as far as professors go. I know I had one a management professor who had worked for years and years in all these different levels of business. And there's something about him pausing in the middle of a lecture and going, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly his businesses, but this reminds me of when we got acquired by Verizon. I had to fire 50% of my team, and he just goes through it like that. And he's like, I did this in 2 weeks. Like, what would you do on it? But he has the real world examples for it, which just brings it to a whole another level of knowledge.
Yep, and credibility,
Mhm.
for the person that's talking. Yeah, so that's awesome. And not to put down educators that haven't done what they're teaching. All educators are extremely valuable, and I respect the heck out of anyone that wants to be a teacher. But in my opinion, the best teachers are the ones that are teaching something they've already done.
Mm. One thing I'd like to go back to a little bit in that story is when you talk about the $5, it's not about the $5 is what you said. And what that resonated with me was the idea of you have all of your resources as an entrepreneur, but that's not just capital. You have your skill sets, you have all these different things. Because my first thought as you're going through, my first thought was, and I did go with the alcohol route. You go buy 2 4 Locos, 2 for $5, flip them to the freshmen for $10 a pop. I
Yeah.
was going that route with it.
Oh yeah.
And then once you said that wasn't the right answer, light bulb went off. I said, oh, just sales consulting, something like that, where
Yeah.
it's just someone going out and
Service.
just finding someone that's offering a service that you don't have
Yep.
to use that $5 for. And that's the big workaround that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand. And I didn't understand for a while as an entrepreneur, was that you have the valuable skills that are built into you that you don't need to go raise capital for. You can go out and consult, you can go out and use any skills that you have rather than going out and raising millions of dollars in venture capital.
Yep. Yep. And it's nice to have everything. I've raised about $1 million in total capital, and we have a huge $750,000 small business loan with the SBA. But that was in tiny little chunks across 7 years. My first loan was $50,000 from a nonprofit bank that took a flyer on me. We started the company on Kickstarter. So my first quote unquote investors were random humans on the internet that like watches. So yeah, there's always something else that you have in here that you can sell, and or your time, right? I think one of the groups, they sold SEO services, because that one of the students was a marketing major and was really fascinated by SEO. And so he just did some local SEO for a few businesses and made a few $100. And hey, it's a great business. You don't need $5 to start it. So yeah, all great ideas. The Four Loco one, I like that sounds fun, but
Yeah, might need a cover for that one.
Exactly. Yeah, to each his own.
No, so what I'm okay. I got to get into my little bit of engineering. So
Hit me.
obviously, there's a lot of capital involved when you're making a product. You're going out and you got to go find the antique watches, and you got to design the case. Did you outsource, or did y'all start in-house? Because I'm thinking the mill machines and that
Yep.
sort of stuff, and the raw material that you have to purchase. How'd you get that up and running? Was that the Kickstarter or what?
The first watch story is what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the simple way of asking it.
So the first watch, I call the MVP, right? That's another academia, the minimum viable product.
Mm-hmm.
It was 3D printed on a 3D printer that we purchased with our own funds. My business partner, Tyler, and I lived in the same house. I had a full-time job. So Vortic at that time was my side hustle. He was full-time. And we 3D printed a case out of plastic. We spray painted it to make it look like it was metal. We super glued it together around an old pocket watch. And then we took really okay pictures of it and put it on Kickstarter and made a video of, hey, this is we were honest. This is a prototype. We don't have any idea what we're doing. But the concept is we're making a one-of-a-kind, 100% American-made watch and preserving pieces of American history one watch at a time. And so we just sold it. And yeah, we set the goal at $10,000 because at that time, $10,000 was a lot of money to us. And we were like, oh, if with 10 grand, we could buy another 3D printer and I don't know, do something. And we raised $41,000 in 30 days from mostly random people on the internet. Wow. And we used that 40,000 in sales with that MVP to go pitch investors and say, okay, we check the box. People want this. People will spend, $1,000 or so for this watch. We ran all the numbers. Now we need to hire a contract manufacturer or a prototype business or something to help us figure out how to make the things. So we need another $200,000, and we started raising money at that point. And so we took the 40 some thousand from Kickstarter, raised about 200,000 in initial seed funding, and with that $250,000, found a couple local engineers and contract manufacturers to help us make the first components. And then, that was 2015 when we started like shipping the first watches. And at that time we were just a marketing company, and we did assembly of the final product and shipped it to the customer, but all the components were made elsewhere. And then starting in 2016, we started raising more money, working with banks, saying, hey, if we bought a small manual CNC, it's not even a CNC mill, it's called a Sureline mill, where it's actually like it's a little servo motor, and then you crank it to tell it to move and what the tool does.
Mm-hmm.
And my business partner, Tyler, used one of those to make a case for a watch. And we said, okay, we bought this machine for $3,000. It takes about 6 hours of manual machine time to make one watch worth of parts. If we had a CNC machine that's $50,000 or $60,000, it could do everything that human does in 6 hours in about 6.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So do the math. There you go. Cost of goods goes way down, all that stuff. And we compared that to contract manufacturing to say, or we could hire someone that owns a CNC machine to do this for us. And that would be, I don't know, it was like $200 a case. And we just built out the financial projections, raised more money, and worked with banks and finance companies and the manufacturer of those machines. And slowly across the last 5 years started to bring everything in-house. And the only things we don't make in Colorado now are the glass on the front of the watch and the leather of the strap. Every metal component we make in-house. We have 3 CNC machines, and Tyler does all the engineering and taught himself how to do all that engineering via YouTube because we have time. And so we figured it out.
That's awesome. Was that an intended pun? A watchmaker that has time.
I try. I'm a dad. I gotta throw in dad jokes.
Got to get those dad jokes going, man. That's right.
Every once in a while.
Well, the thing I want to just touch on real quick is you used Kickstarter as a viable product test to the market. Was that intentional?
No. So we. And I would call it, so the prototype on Kickstarter was our minimum viable product.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up using Kickstarter as proof of product market fit, which is when anyone asks me for advice on how to start a product company or consumer goods company, you have to have product market fit. People have to be willing to spend money on your product, or else you really should not make it. But none of that was intended. I was looking for a picture of this the other day. I don't think we ever took a picture of it, but we had a whiteboard in the kitchen of the house that Tyler and I lived in back then. And it had like stretch goals for our Kickstarter. So if we made $50,000, we would go to Mexico. If we made $100,000, we would buy a boat. If we made $250,000, we'd buy a house and a building and a CNC machine. And if we made $1 million, we would, I don't even know. It was all these stupid, we were 22, we had no concept of how much money it takes to start a business and no concept of how much money it would take marketing wise to make that much money on Kickstarter. Even making $40,000 was a lot of that's full organic. We spent no money on Facebook ads or anything. We were just emailing people on the internet trying to say, hey, do you like watches? So almost none of what's happened to me in the last 7 years has been on purpose. To answer your question, we've either figured it out or, it's like what my dad says about golf. I'd rather be lucky than good. And I think you make your own luck. So it's all kind of a mix there, but we've definitely gotten lucky in some of those instances where, yes, Kickstarter ended up being a proof of product market fit.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Well, and the other thing, it's giving you right now the opportunity to do what you talked about earlier, eventually retiring and going back and working at Penn State. Now you're actually you're already doing that. You're
Yeah.
already educating people with it. So that's great.
Thanks.
I was just
Okay.
going to use your line, Dad, because I was trying to beat you to it, but I guess you're going somewhere else with it. Luck is where preparation meets opportunity, right?
I like
Yeah,
that.
but that's a Stoic quote. I can't take credit for that one.
Yeah, but that you can also apply that to golf too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of preparation,
Mhm.
creating the opportunity for you to hit that hole in one or get close to the pin. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, RT, man, it's been great. And it's definitely my turn to go first with what I learned, Camden.
I can't
So,
even keep track anymore, honestly.
well, I always keep track because I'm the dad, right? So
There you go.
somebody's got to keep score.
that's right. And I do keep score. Don't worry. I've got a book. See, it's all, I'm
Yeah,
keeping.
all
It's
right.
all right there.
Oh yeah, I'm keeping score. But I'd forgotten about the phrase, but it's such a good one. Sales cures all.
Mhm.
And really what that means is positive cash flow. With
Yep.
positive cash flow in your business, you can overcome a lot of impediments, a lot of obstacles.
Yep. It's one of the truest things that I've ever heard, and then I think the first time I heard it, I was like, well, and we're experiencing it right now. I mean, we're having some of our best sales months ever during these difficult times, and cash in the bank just eliminates a lot of those other stressors.
So Camden, what'd you learn?
Well, you took mine because I actually hadn't heard that one before, believe it or not. Sales cures all was mine, but I'm going to reach out. I can pull something else. I was paying attention. More so, I think something that I just picked up from all these different stories that you were telling is really the power of positivity, and then the power of being what I would consider like future looking. That when you talk about your stretch goals, when you talk about hiring employees, all of it is talking about what's going to happen, not what's happening right now. And having that kind of mindset can be so big as an entrepreneur because it can suck. You can get slapped with, lawsuits from $9 billion companies. But if you're looking right now at what's going on that day, you can easily weigh yourself down. But if you start looking towards the future, if you start just focusing on sales, you start focusing on things that you can control, then you can be a lot more positive inside your business.
Yep. Yeah, I love the quote. I don't know who said it, but if you shoot for the stars and only make it halfway, you still ended up on the moon. And that it's so true. It's like you got to set, and sometimes setting unrealistic goals is depressing because you never actually hit the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of psychological studies that say it's not, you don't get the feeling of winning from succeeding and hitting the goal. You get that feeling from the process of getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so true. And I can preach that all day because I don't know that I've ever actually hit a goal that I've set. But I have a dang good time trying. And that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, I would say that it's. I think Tom Matson is the one who talks about this, Dad. That it's the easiest way to double your business is try to 10x it.
Yeah, that's such a concise way to say it. I love that.
Yeah. So what'd you learn, RT?
I I've learned recently doing a few of these podcast episodes and being interviewed by a few different people like yourselves that um, this process of like telling stories about my successes and failures and all that stuff is not only fun but enlightening,
Mm.
um, in the sense of, you know, somebody said this fairly recently, and it was sometimes you have to look behind you to really see how far you've come, and be proud of that, and try to get perspective of it. And that's kind of like we were just talking about. I set these huge goals, these unrealistic goals. I want to do all these things with my life, that I am always looking forward. And I think what I've learned is that it's fun, and I should continue to look backwards as much as I can, just to be proud of what myself and the team and everyone has accomplished.
Yeah, the quote that I recall, or that reminds me of, really similar, is you have to know where you've come from in order to know where you're going.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's awesome.
it's
Well,
true.
where can people find Vortic watches? Where can they get their hands on them, order them? What's the process? How's that set up? Where do we go?
For sure. So it's vorticwatches.com. V as in Victor, ORTIC watches.com. We make a watch of the day. So we can only make a few hundred watches a year. And every day we make one new one-of-a-kind watch. And when it's sold, it's gone forever. So if you follow us on Instagram, it's at Vortic Watches, Facebook /Vortic Watches. We post that new watch every single day. And if you want it, you have to buy it. Most of them sell in minutes or hours. So that's the easiest way to follow us, find us. You can sign up for our email list and learn all about us there at vorticwatches.com.
Show us that military watch that I did not get in the game soon enough to buy
well,
one.
So we're making more. So this is the military edition. It's the product that I'm most proud of.
It's an awesome looking watch.
We made 50 of these, and we're going to make 50 a year. The only day you can buy it is on Veterans Day, which is November 11th.
Okay.
$500 from the sale of each watch goes to a school for watchmakers that specializes in teaching U.S. military vets how to become watchmakers. They all have open backs, so you can see the inner workings in there. But this pocket watch was flown on a B bomber in World War II over Nazi Germany. It was the navigator's watch, and we turned it into a usable wristwatch that you can wear every day. We call it the military edition.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm marking my calendar and Camden, Christmas present for Dad. Just putting
dropping hints. We'll figure it out.
You must be betting on me having a few big months of business if I'm buying you one of those.
Stretch goals, son.
Stretch goals, yes, sir.
Hey, RT, man, it's been a blast. Really appreciate your time this morning, and thanks for sharing your story. Yeah, man, really fun and great story and great products. I appreciate what y'all are doing.
Thank you so much. I could talk to you guys all day. This was awesome.
Great.
Run us out.
Thank you all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to RT Custer for joining us today, and our sponsors MASH, Military and Athletic Strength Hemp Oil, and Verbi Virtual Fundraising. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotishow.buzzsprout.com. Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.